Oh, sorry. Good morning. Again, different time zones. Hi, Veeraprasad. Hi, Pankaj. Hi, Pranav. Hi, Mahinder. Hi, Pooja. Hey, guys. I hope I'm audible. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Let me share my screen. Just a second. Okay, so where were we in the last class, guys? What was I discussing in the last session? I think we were covering networking fundamentals. Oh, 1 second. Networking. Yeah, here it is. What part did I cover up to in the last class, guys? Where did we stop in the last session?
We're about to start classification.
We were about to start the classification, right? Okay, cool. So again, we have covered what public and private IPs are in the last class, I suppose. And we have to talk about the classes, the ranges and their classes and the relevance of these classes today, right? Is that correct, everyone? Mahinder, Pankaj, Pooja, Pranav, Veeraprasad.
Yes, sir.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so let's get started. So now, as mentioned, guys, your entire IPv4 range from the first IP 0000 to the last IP 255, 255, 255, 255 is divided in these five classes. And today we're going to talk about the relevance of those classes. So why five separate classes? Why not just one single class, which would have made our job easier? Okay, that's a commonly asked question. So again, there's a relevance, there's a necessity for it, guys. Let me explain. Okay. But before we get into that, let's talk about these ranges. So class A starts at the first IP 0000 and it goes up to 127, 255, 255, 255. Okay. So you have to remember these ranges, guys. It's very important. Okay. So I'll be sharing this document to you. You can memorize it. Okay. And since it's ending at 127 and the remaining three octets are 255s, what would the next IP be, guys? 255s cycle back to zero, and this 127 increments by one. So automatically, we know class B range starts at 128,000. Okay. Since class A is ending at 127, 255, 255, 255, class B starts at the next IP, where all the 255s cycle back to zeros and the 127 increments by 1. So you have class B starting at 128,000. Okay. And from 128, it goes all the way up to 191, 255, 255, 255. And since it's ending at 191, class C starts at 192,000. Okay. And from 192, it goes up to 223, 255, 255, 255. And since it's ending at 223, class D starts at 224. And from 224, it goes up to 239, 255, 255, 255. And since it's ending at 239, class E starts at 240. And from 240, it goes up to the last IP, 255, 255, 255, 255. So the only four numbers you have to remember are these numbers over here: 127, 120, 191, 223, and 239. If I draw it out, or if I, 1 second, I think I can. Do I have a tool here to draw? Okay, anyways. So these are the four numbers that you would have to remember. Because from these four numbers itself, you automatically get the next range: 0 to 127, 128 to 191, 192 to 223, 224 to 239, and 240 to 255. On the left side, you have all even numbers: 0, 128, 192, 224, 240. And on the right side, you have all odd numbers. Okay. On the left side, you have all zeros in the ending three octets. Okay. Everywhere you see, they're all zeros. On the right side, you have all 255s. So the only four numbers you have to remember are these four numbers: 127, 191, 223, and 239. From this four numbers itself, you can remember the entire table of range of each class. Okay. 0 to 127, 128 to 191, 192 to 223, 224 to 239, and 240 to 255. Okay. Now, in this entire range. Now, each of these classes has a set of public IPs and a set of private IPs as well, right? So class A's private IP range starts from 10,000 to 10,255,255,255. So this in between this entire range between 0 and 127, there's a small range from 10,000 to 10,255,255,255. These IPs are called the private IPs. Okay, so specifically this range of IPs is the private IPs, the ones which you can use in your local network. And any IP outside this range by default is a public IP. So outside, which means before 10 or after 10, any IP in that range would always be a public IP. Similarly, in class B as well, in the range between 128 and 191, there's a small range 172.16.00 to 172.31.255.255. Now, any IP within this range is a private IP, and any IP outside that range by default is a public IP. Similarly, in class C as well, between 192 and 223, there's a small range 192.168.00 to 192.168.255.255. This is the private IP range in class C. Any IP within this range is a private IP, and any IP outside this range is a public IP. Class D and Class E have no private IPs in them. All of them are public IPs itself. If I had to elaborate this a bit further, let's take the example of Class A. Now, Class A starts at the first IP 0000, and it goes up to the last IP 127.255.255.255. Same exact range which is written over here. Okay. Now, in this entire range of Class A, there's a small private IP range from 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255. Okay. So any IP within this range is a private IP. And any IP outside that range, which is from 0 up to 10, which is 9.255.255.255, and after 10, from 11 to 127. So these are the two sets of public IPs. So in a similar fashion, in every class, you have one small set of private IPs and two subsets of public, sorry, yeah, one set of private IPs and two subsets of public IPs. Okay. Is that clear for everyone? Any confusion or any doubts? Shrestha?
Sir, I have a doubt, sir.
Yeah, Pankaj, go ahead.
Sir, basically, why do we create or classified all these classes?
Why do we what? Sorry, your voice is having a lot of background noise as well.
Sir, why do we classified all these IPs, sir, in different classes?
I'll come to that. I'll come to that, Pankaj. I'll explain that. So there's a relevance for it. There's an importance for class A. There's an importance for class B. There's an importance for class C and D and E as well. I'm going to come to that in a minute. Okay. So I'll explain that. Any questions regarding the ranges, guys? Again, any issue, again, how these classes are being differentiated. Okay. How in each class you have a set of private and two sets of public IPs. Any questions in that? Why do we classify them? Yeah, I got your question, Pankaj. I'll explain them in a minute now. Okay. So yeah, just to understand these better, guys, now we'll perform a small exercise. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to write down some random IPs. And looking at these ranges now, you have to tell me which IP belongs to which class and whether they are public or private IPs. Okay. So I don't think we have performed that exercise earlier. Let's do that today. Or did we already do that? I don't think so. I'm running so many simultaneous batches at the same time. I'm getting confused up to what extent I've covered in each class. So yeah. So let me write down some random IPs here, guys. Firstly. Yeah. So what I want you to do is look at these IPs here and tell me which IP belongs to which class. Okay, let me put this as 186. Okay. Okay, so I've written down some random IPs here, guys. What I want you to do now is look at these ranges here, okay, and tell me which IP belongs to which class and whether it's a public IP or a private IP. Okay, so let me give you the answer for the first one. Okay, so we have the number 10.10.10.10. Now, looking at the first octet 10 here, we know this falls between 0 and 127. So, therefore, this is a class A IP. Okay. And now once it belongs to class A, once we have confirmed that this belongs to class A, then we look at this range. So for an IP to be a private IP in class A, first octet should be 10, and the remaining octets can be anything from 0 to 255. So the second octet ranges from 0 to 255, third also 0 to 255. Oh, sorry, yeah, third and fourth also 0 from 255. Okay. So if the first octet is 10, we can confirm it that this is a private IP. Okay. For an IP to be a private IP in class B, what should the condition be? First octet should be 172. Second octet should be between 16 and 31. And the remaining two octets can be anything from 0 to 255. And for an IP to be a private IP in class C, what's the condition? First octet should be 192. Second octet should be 168. And the remaining two can be anything from 0 to 255. So looking at the second number here, 192. Which class does this fall under? 192 is in class C. So this is a class C IP. And for it to be a private IP, first octet should be 192. That seems to match. Second octet should be 168. But what we have here is 186. Okay. So that's not matching. So therefore, this is a public IP on the other hand. Right. I hope this is clear. Can you give me the answer for the next one? 10.180.9.126. Which class is this, guys? Class A or B or
A.
C or yeah, class A.
Class A.
Correct.
Class A.
Correct. Public or private?
Private.
Private, right? Perfect answer. Okay, why is this private? Because the first octet is 10. So anything starting with 10 is a private IP. Next answer 142, 250, 192, 221.
Class B.
Class B, correct answer. Public or private?
Public.
Public. Good. Next one 250, 10, 20, 30.
Class E.
Class C.
Class E.
Class E. Okay, perfect.
Class
Public.
Public.
Perfect answer. Next one 172, 35, 45, 55.
Class B. Private.
Class B. And I've got an answer as private. Are you sure this is a private IP?
And public, sorry.
Yeah, this is a public IP.
It's a public.
The
Public.
second octet here is 35. Okay. It's not between 16 and 31. It's outside that range. So therefore, that's a public IP. Right. Oh, okay. Moving on. Next one 172, 20, 30, 40. Oh, sorry. This is class B.
Class B.
Class B.
Class B. Correct.
Private.
And
Private.
correct answer. Next one.
Class C.
Class C.
Public.
Public. Correct answer. Next one.
Class A.
Class A.
Public.
Public. Correct answer. Next one. Oh, sorry. 1 second. Yeah. Next one.
Class A.
Class A.
Public. Public.
Public. Correct. Next one. Class
Class
C.
E.
Okay.
Public.
Public. Correct answer, guys. Oh, sorry. Okay. So that is how, as soon as you look at an IP, you have to figure out, guys, which class it belongs to and whether it's a public or a private IP. Now, the reason this is important is because when we work in the upcoming sessions, we usually come across logs. Okay. And in these logs, sometimes you might find the attacker's IP. Okay. So looking at that IP, you have to figure out whether it's a public IP or a private IP. If it were a private IP, it means the attack is initiated from your own local network. In your own network, the attacker is present. If it were a public IP, it means the attack is being initiated from an external network. It's not in your local network. It's coming from the internet. So that classification is very important, okay, to understand where the attack is initiating from. Okay. Now, in the last class, I've shown you how to check your public and private IPs. I hope you can recall. So if I had to check my public IP, how do I do that, guys? How do I get to know what my public IP is? Sorry, come again.
We have to browse for what is my IP.
Exactly. So if I search for what is my IP, I get my public IP. And you can see I've got an IP here, but which says 49.204.238.219. Now, can you tell me which class is it falling under? Let me write it down here and open up the presentation slide as well. 49.204.238.219.
Class A.
Class A. And is it a
Class A.
public IP?
Public.
Yes.
This is a public IP. And I've also shown you how to check your private IP as well, right? How do you do that? You open up your command prompt and search a command called ipconfig. This is the Windows method. And you can see I've got an IP 192.168.0.5. If I copy and paste it here, now looking at this range, can you tell me which class it falls under? 192.168.0.
Class C. Class
Yes,
C.
class C. Okay. And is it a public IP or a private IP?
Private.
Private IP. Perfect. Okay. So that is how you figure out which IP is public and which IP is private. Now, coming to the point of why 5 separate classes. To answer Pankaj's question. So each class here, guys, has an important characteristic. So one of them, which is class A, has one network portion and 3 host portions. Class B, on the other hand, has 2 network portions and 2 host portions. Class C, on the other hand, has 3 network portions and 1 host portion. Class D and Class E finally have all network portions itself. There are no host portions in them. Now you might be confused. What are these network portions and host portions? So to explain this, we'll take the example of Class C first, okay, which has 3 network portions and only 1 host portion. Okay, so if you notice, as you're going down the line, network portions are increasing in number. Class A only has 1 network portion, Class B has 2 network portions, Class C has 3 network portions, Class D and Class E have all network portions itself. Okay, so we'll take the example of Class C first, which has 3 network portions and only 1 host portion to understand what these network and host portions are. Okay, so we all know Class C's private IP range starts at 192.168.0.0. That's the same thing which I've written down over here in my notepad file. Yeah, here. Okay. So Class C private IP range, excuse me, starts at 192.168.0.0 and goes up to 192.168.255.255. Now, in these IP addresses, in the first 3 octets, you have the network portions for Class C. Okay, so the 192.168.0 belong to the network portions. Okay, and the last octet here belongs to the host portion. Okay, let's keep that aside for a while. Let's talk about the sequence again. So after 00, what do we have? We have 01, then 02, then 03, then 04. This goes on all the way up to 0255. After 0255, we have 10, then 11, then 12, then 13, which goes up to 1255. Then you have 20, which goes up to 2255, and so on and so forth. Now, what I mean by these network and host portions is whenever there's a change in the host portion, it is just to represent each individual host in the network. So 0.1 could be my Wi-Fi router. 0.2 could be my mobile phone. 0.3 could be my laptop. 0.4 could be my smartwatch, for example. Okay, so each change in this host portion just indicates a change in the host itself. So each of these is given to each individual host. Okay, as such, now I can connect a maximum of only 255 hosts. Okay, and all of these now belong to the same network, which is 192.168.0.network. So the network portions are to identify or give the identification for the entire network. So all of these belong to the network 192.168.0.network. And the host portion is to give identity to that individual host in that network. Okay, so this one is basically the first device in the 192.168.0.network. This 2 is the second device or the second host in the 192.168.0.network. So as such, in each Class C network, you can only connect a maximum of 255 devices because after 0255, you have 10. And whenever there's a change in the network portion, the network divides over there, which means this is the last IP in that network. And from here starts a new network, the 1 dot network, 192.168.1 dot network. So from 1.0 to 1.255, this is another network. Okay, and they can only communicate among themselves. So you have to remember this very important point, guys. Only IPs belonging to the same network can freely communicate with each other. They cannot communicate with IPs belonging to other networks. If that is required, you need something called a router again. Okay. So if you have an organization, in an organization, what they use is switches. So again, if I search for a network switch here, okay, so this is what a network switch looks like. If I open up this image in a new tab. Oh, 1 second. Yeah, much better. So as you can see, this is a network switch, guys. So in an organization, when you have multiple devices, each of these devices is connected to the switch through a LAN cable. So one end of the LAN cable goes in the switch and the other end goes to your device. Okay. Or you can also use a wireless router also to connect. Okay. But in organization, you usually have LAN cables. Okay. Now in each of these devices, in each of these ports, you have each device connected. Okay. Now over here, in one port, you'll have your router. So let's say in this port, I have 192.168.0.1 connected. Okay. Then in this port, I could have 192.168.0.2 connected. Okay. In another port, let's say in this port, I can connect 192.168.0.3. Okay. Like that, I can connect 0, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like that, and as many as possible. But if I bring a device like, let's say, 192.168 1.10 over here. Again, even if I connect it to this network with a LAN cable, this device now will not be able to communicate with other devices. Although it is physically connected to the same switch with all these other devices, it still cannot communicate with them because it belongs to a completely different network portion. All of these belong to the network 192.168.0. network, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and this belongs to the 1. network. So logically, this belongs to a completely different category and they're going to alienate this IP. So they won't communicate with this because this belongs to a different network altogether. Okay. So in class C, in that fashion, we can understand no matter what range you take. Oh, let me delete these drawings. Yeah. So no matter what range you take over here, in each class C network, you can only connect a maximum of 255 devices from 1 to 255. I'm omitting the 0th IP just to round it up. Okay. But no matter what network you take in class C, 192.168.0. network or 1. network or 2. network or 3. network, no matter what network you take, the maximum number of devices you can connect in class C is only 255, not more than that. That's the relevance of the network portions and the host portions. Okay. So the important point to remember here is the host portion gives the identity for each individual host. Network portion gives the identity for the entire network. Okay. So this is the 192.168.0. network. And in that network, this is the first host, the second host, the third host, the fourth host, so on and so forth. And in each class C network, you can only connect a maximum of 255 hosts. That's the relevance of class C, guys. Okay. That's the same thing shown here in the presentation. Total number of devices or maximum number of devices we can connect in each class C network is 255, not more than that. Each of these is its own group. Okay. And each IP in a group can only communicate with the other IPs in the same group. They can't communicate with other groups freely. Okay. Is that clear for everyone? Mahinder, Gaurav, Pankaj, Pooja, Pranav, Veeraprasad, Shrestha.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? Anyone? Pankaj, I hope I've clarified your question. Right. So we'll come to class B and
Yes,
class A
sir.
as well. Right. Let's complete that also. Oh, Shrestha, any questions on your end?
Sir, I have a question.
Oh, yeah. One thing.
So, sir, this is Pooja, sir.
Right, Pooja. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, we have in slide, I can see that we can connect in each network. So, what do you mean by in each network? That I'm not getting.
Network, again, if you remember the first definition, when we talk about network, it's a group of devices, a collection of devices, right? So this whole thing is one network, a group of devices which can communicate with each other. Remember the first definition that we had over here. So if I go back to the
Yes, yes,
first slide.
yes.
So when we talk about a network is a collection of interconnected devices that can communicate with each other. Okay. So now, if you go with this class C slide again, this is a group of IPs which can communicate with each other now. Okay, so 0.1 now can communicate with any device here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or up to 255. But the 0.1 cannot communicate with 1.1 or 2.1 because they are different other networks. Okay, so your network over here is identified by the first three portions, 192.168.0. Okay, So this here is the same network because the first three octets are same. Okay, 192.168.0. And the last portion identifies each host in that network. So this is the group of IPs which can freely communicate with each other. That's your network. Okay. Is that clear, Pooja?
Yes, sir. So, sir, sorry, but how many such networks then can we get in class C?
Yeah,
Like,
good question. Very good question. So if you notice over here, the entire range of class C starts from 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. This was the question I was about to ask myself. But again, since you've asked it, this is here the first network, 00 to 0255. 10 to 1255. This is the second network. 20 to 2255. 30 to 3255. 40 to 4255. Goes on and on and on up to 2550 to 255255. So now you give me the answer. How many networks are there? Anyone? How many networks do we have in the entire class C range, guys? We know in each network we have 255 devices. How many networks are there in total? Any answers?
maybe 255. I'm not sure.
Very close. 256. Okay, because we're including the
Oh, okay.
zeroth network as well. So from 0 to 255, we have 256 networks there. Okay,
Okay.
good
Okay.
question.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
very close answer. Right. Moving on to class B now. So class B has two network portions and two host portions now. Okay. So when we come back to class B over here, oh, 1 second. Yeah. So now in class B, as mentioned, we have two network portions and two host portions. And we all know the class B private IP range starts at 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255. Okay. So the first IP here is 16.0.0. Okay. So now please note last two portions are host portions. So after 00, you have 01, 02, 03, 04. Goes on all the way up to 0255. And now, please notice this. After 0255, you have 10, and this does not change the network because even this third octet now, 1, also belongs to host portion. So this 0255 can now actually communicate with 10 as well. The network doesn't divide already there. Okay. So from 00 to 0255, all these devices now can freely communicate with 10 also because that third octet is also belonging to the host portion. Now, so on from 10 goes up to 1255, then you have 20, which goes up to 2255, then you have 30, which goes up to 3255. Like that, it goes on and on and on. And somewhere down the line, you would have 2550, 2551, 2552, 2553, which goes up to 255, 255. Now both these octets are filled and they cycle back to zeros, and the 16 changes to 17. And when you notice over here, this 16 is the network portion. So when 16 changes to 17, with the same logic, the network divides over here, which means the class B network starts at 172.16.0.0 and goes up to 16.255.255, which is a much larger network compared to class C. Okay. Similarly, from 1700 to 17.255.255, that's the next network. 1800 to 18.255.255, that's the next network. 1900 to 19.255.255, that's the next network. Goes on and on and on. And you have the last network at 3100 to 31.255.255. This is the last private IP in class B. Okay. And in each network now, how many devices are we able to communicate, guys? Since you have two host portions, you can connect a maximum of 255 into 255 devices, which is closely or approximately equal to 65,535. Okay. In class C, you could only connect 255 devices, not more than that. But in class B, in each network, we are now able to communicate 65,000 devices, a very large number. Okay. Is that clear for everyone? Any questions regarding class B? I hope now you're getting the difference or the relevance of these classes, guys. Pankaj, I hope your questions are getting cleared slowly one by one.
Yes, sir.
Right. And finally, when you come to class A, okay, anyone who has questions with class B, what with this number 255 into 255? How did we get this number or so? Again, if you notice, for every fourth octet here, so this last octet here, we have 255 devices. So for 0, we have 255 IPs. For 1 again, we have 255 IPs. For 2 again, we have 255 IPs. For 3 again, we have 255 IPs. So like that, for every third octet, we have 255 IPs. And in this third octet, we have another 255 values. So 255 into 255. which is 65535. Okay. And finally, when you come to class A here, it has a one network portion and three host portions. So in class A, the first private IP starts at 10.0.0.0, and at last private IP goes up to 10.255.255.255. So this only has one single private network, guys. So from 10.0.0.0 all the way up to 10.255.255.255, it's one single private IP network itself. Okay. And in this one single network, we can connect a maximum of 255 into 255 into 255 IPs, much larger. Okay. So again, the reason they had three different classes is because to connect three different network sizes. Okay. So if you have a small network which has not more than 255 devices to connect in your small home networks or in your local or small organization networks, in that you would always prefer going for class C, because there you don't have a necessity for connecting more than 255 IPs. But excuse me, a bit sick today. But if you talk about a network where you have to connect more than 255 devices, then you can either go for class B or for class A. So for larger networks, multinational companies where you have a necessity to connect more than 255 devices in each network, then you have to prefer class B or class A, anything. Okay. Class C is for small networks. Class B and class A are for mid-sized or larger networks. Okay, that's the difference. Okay. And finally, when you come to class D and class E, there are no private IPs in them. These network and host portions are only relevant for private IPs. Okay. So these, you can only have networks when you have private IPs. Okay. Because in public IP, each unique public IP is a different entity itself. It's to give you the connection to the internet. You cannot form networks with public IPs. Okay. Networks can only be formed with private IPs. Okay. So class D and class E public IPs are for special organizations. Class ABC public IPs are given to the general public, to people like you and me who want to access the internet. Your ISP gives public IPs from class A, B, and C. Okay. Class D and Class E public IPs are reserved for special organizations such as research and development organizations, military organizations, government portals, your special investigation services, CIA, FBI, RAW, ISI, such covert operation organizations, okay, or weather forecasting organizations. So all of these organizations have Class D and Class E public IPs reserved for them. We cannot use Class D and Class E. They're only specifically used by those organizations. Okay. What we get to use are the public IPs from first three classes, A, B, and C. All the ISPs on the internet, Airtel, Act Fiber, Hathway, BSNL, Verizon, AT&T. All of these organizations can use class A, B, C public IPs. Okay. Class D and class E are not in their authority. Okay. They're only reserved for special other organizations. Okay. Is that clear, guys? What is the relevance of each class and where these classes are being used and how they are different from one another? Gaurav, Mahinder, Pankaj, Pooja, Pranav, Veeraprasad, Shrestha. Any questions? Anyone? Does anyone want me to explain anything again, guys? Please do not hesitate. This is your first hands-on understanding of IP addresses. So again, it is very normal to have questions. Please do ask questions. I'll try to clarify them in much better examples or so. So yeah, Shrestha, any questions? Gaurav, Mahinder, Pankaj.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So is it necessary to like remember the private IP ranges for each class?
I would say it's important, Pooja, because again, when you look at a log, as soon as you look at that log, you need to know whether it's a public IP or a private IP. So you have to remember this entire slide. So in each class, you have to remember the private IP as well. So we'll come with practice. So as we progress with the classes, we'll keep noticing these IPs a lot. So again, yeah, but it's important to memorize for this entire slide, I would say.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
All right. Shrestha, any questions? I couldn't hear your audio. Okay. Yeah, Mahinder, you were saying something.
Question. So,
Yeah.
why did they divide like a network and host as separate? Is there any reason, sir?
Why did they divide
Network
us?
portion and host, network portion and host portion, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
For class A. Is there any reason like that?
Yeah, to
Just
form
add.
networks itself, right? because again, you cannot just keep assigning each person one single different IP and not establish connection between them. So your network and host portions are to form networks there, where in each network you have a certain limit of hosts. So in class C, you only have 255 hosts. In class B, 255 into 255. And in class A, 255 into 255 into 255. So the relevance over here is to create networks which have certain limit of hosts in each network. Class C is for small networks, class B for mid-sized networks, class A for larger networks. Okay. So the again, the reason over here is to have connectivity for different sizes of devices in a network. That's the relevance, I would say.
Thank you.
Right. And again, if you ask me why specifically these ranges 10, 0, 172, 16, 192, 168, these are not random ranges, guys. There's something called a parity bit. Again, that's a much deeper concept in networking. So if you go with that course like CCNA and all that, they'll explain what this parity bit in networking is. Okay. So again, for our cybersecurity concept, it's not relevant. Okay, it's not that required. But if you want to learn why do we have specifically IP starting with 10 for class A, why specifically 172, 16 for class B, why specifically 190 to 168 for class C, you can do some research on this word called parity bit in networking. That'll explain you why these classes are starting with these numbers. Okay. So again, not that important for our cybersecurity part. Okay. It's important to just remember these ranges. Okay. Because again, as mentioned in our upcoming sessions, when we perform log analysis or when we try to, again, attack a certain system, and if we need that IP, we need to know what IP to attack on. If it's in our local network, you would use the private IP for it. If it's a web server on the internet, you would use the public IP for it. When you perform scanning or pen testing, you need to enter IPs manually. So in that place, you have to understand what IP is relevant there, okay, in that process. So that's why it's important to remember this entire slide, guys. A very important concept in cybersecurity. I don't think people focus on networking much when you talk about cybersecurity. But I would say, in my experience, understanding networking makes your job a lot easier for cybersecurity. Okay. So that's why I've included this prerequisite, understanding what networking is, what IP addresses are, what these categories of IPs are. Okay. And some important protocols as well. So in the next class, we're going to discuss about these important protocols. What is DHCP protocol? What is DNS protocol? Very important servers and services. We'll talk about all this in the session tomorrow. Okay. And tomorrow we're going to conclude the networking part, guys. So tomorrow will be the last session for networking. And day after tomorrow, we start the first practical session, which is lab setup installation. So again, only two more demos left out, guys, tomorrow and day after. No more demos, I suppose, after that. So if you have not registered already, please do register at the earliest. Okay. So yeah. And one more thing I wanted to ask. So as mentioned, there's simultaneous or parallelly running evening batches as well. Is anyone here interested in an evening slot? I can convey that information to the institute guys. Veera Prasad, Pranav, Pooja, Pankaj, Mahinder, Gaurav. There's a batch running at 7 p.m. and there's one batch running at 8:30 p.m. Is anyone here interested in an evening slot rather than a morning slot? If you have difficulty in the morning time slot, no one, right? Please do let me know if there's someone like that. I'll convey that information to the institute and they'll give you the link for that session as well. Okay.
What is the time for evening batch?
Evening batch, as mentioned, one time slot. Let me drop it in the chat box as well. Evening time slots. One is 7 p.m. and one is 8:30 p.m. Okay. For information, contact the institute. Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's that.
sure.
Nothing. Yeah, Veera Prasad.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, I have a doubt. May I know the difference between the cyber security and ethical hacking?
I again to very simply explain this, Veera Prasad. It's like, has anyone heard about these courses from Cisco, CCNA, CCNP, CCI, etc., etc.? Has anyone come across these courses? Again, to explain in simple terms, cybersecurity is the domain, Veera Prasad. Okay. In that domain, one of the important operations that you perform is ethical hacking, which is also commonly known as penetration testing. Okay. So your job role is an ethical hacker's job role. Okay, in the domain of cybersecurity, just like how you have networking as a domain, and in networking you have a network engineer, a network administrator, a network troubleshooter, or whatever it be. Okay, these are your job roles. Okay, to learn that you have courses like CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Admin, CCNP, Cisco Certified Network Professional. Similarly, in cybersecurity domain, you have a course called Certified Ethical Hacking, which explains or makes you understand what's the job role of a penetration tester. Okay, cybersecurity is the domain, like networking as a domain, and in that you have ethical hacking as a procedure, just like how you have networking or troubleshooting as a procedure. Okay, so domain and the courses in it and the operations in it. Is that clear, Veera Prasad?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Right. So yeah, that's that for today's class, guys. Nothing further. I think it's complex already. I would want you to again do some research, guys, on these topics. Okay, what is class A? What is class B? What is class C? I did explain them, but again, I would recommend you give your time to it. You try to understand a bit more on it. Do some research on your end. Research is very important for this course. Okay. So again, you trying to learn more on this on your end as well helps you understand these concepts much better. Okay, what I'm going to show you is only going to cover up to 80%, guys. Remaining 20% is your effort on researching what you're learning in the class every day, learning more on it and asking questions back. Not just learning. If you don't understand something, you ask me the questions back and I can explain those things to you, and it makes your foundations much stronger, right? So please research. That's a very important factor in any domain, I would say. Okay, and ask questions. That is much more important. If you don't ask questions, it's only one of the two possibilities. You either have, again, you have understood everything, or you have understood nothing at all. Okay, so I always hope it's the first condition. And yeah, please ask questions. Do not hesitate to ask questions. Okay, so that's an important thing to know. Yeah, Shrishta, you're saying something. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, there are tons. You can just search again IP checker or so. It will give you that. But it's not feasible to keep checking every single time you see an IP, right, Shrestha? So again, it's important to just memorize them itself. So with just some practice, I would say you can memorize. So in class A, you only have to remember one number, 10. So if any IP starts with 10, it's a private IP. In class B, you have to remember two numbers, 172.16 to 172.31. If any IP is falling between that range, it's a private IP. And in class C, you'll keep coming across this IP a lot, 190 to 168. Those are the two numbers you have to remember. Any IP starting with 190 to 168 is a private IP. Okay. So it's like these five numbers, 10, 172, 16 to 172, 31, and 190 to 168. So if you remember those five, six numbers, those are all the private IPs you have. That's it. Nothing more than that. So yeah, it's important to memorize these guys because as mentioned, throughout our entire course, we'll be working on these IPs. So it's important for cybersecurity. Okay. So yeah, that's that. I think we can disconnect here, guys. If you have not registered already, please do register at the earliest. As mentioned, the demos are coming to an end and we'll be getting into the registered classes from next week. So please do register at the earliest. Bye-bye. Have a good day. See you tomorrow, guys. Thank you, guys. Bye.